Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. This is Nap, your speaker for the class, and welcome to the webinar from GTechLearn, Azure Cost Management and Service Level Agreement. So this is again another webinar in our webinar series, and today we'll be talking about Azure Cost Management and Service Level Agreements. We'll be we'll be focusing the agenda around planning and cost management. What are the different resources which affect how your cost management should get planned? What are the considerations which need to be kept in mind? The different factors which might affect how your cost gets affected when you are planning resources and when you are planning your deployments out there on Microsoft Azure. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be discussing some tools like pricing model, the Azure pricing tool, and the Azure TOC, the total cost of ownership. So we'll be reviewing these two tools and we'll see how they can help us with uh, analyzing the um, the total cost which might come across when we are going to, you can say, going to deploy our resources out there on Azure. So we'll be discussing that, and definitely we'll be talking about Azure SLAs, what Azure SLAs are, and how they can help with the, how they can help with the availability and um, the redundancy out there, how they can help for you with the data duplicacy. So we'll be talking about the different SLAs, the different service level agreements Azure has, and we'll definitely talk about what are service life cycles and how they affect the SLAs. All right, so let's jump in to the first topic in hand, that is planning and cost management. Well, whenever it comes around creating any kind of resource on Azure, be it a virtual machine, be it a storage account, be it a database from Cosmos DB or Azure SQL database, be it any container repository, there is some cost which needs to be paid for. Now, this cost could be either a part of your capital expenditure, the amount of resources which you're consuming. It could be the space which you're using on the data centers and your resources are using on the data centers, the network traffic they are consuming, or it could be the operational cost, that is the cost which is incurred by your resources while they are on the runtime, while they are running. So when we talk about these costs, we have to keep in mind that whenever we deploy resources, what kind of hard disks we are using, what kind of storage accounts we are using, how many virtual processors we use. When we are creating those resources, we need to keep in mind that yes, these costs are under our budget, under the organization's budget, so that we can work around with the resources in a healthy manner. So that is what planning and cost management does. When we talk about the cost management, primarily there are 6 factors which affect how your resources incur cost when it comes to Azure portal. Number one is the resource type. So definitely what kind of resource you are using is going to define the cost. Your costs, they are resource specific. So if you are going to use a SQL database, it might incur a comparatively lesser cost than if you go for using a Cosmos DB database. Similarly, if you are going for a virtual machine, the kind of image you are using and um, the licenses required for that. If you go for the schema size, whether it is a basic disk, whether it is a standard disk or a premium disk, that defines your price right out there. Similarly, when we go ahead talking about the processors, if you are going for 4 processors versus 8 processors, all that defines how your resources are going to incur cost. So for example, let me take you to my Azure portal. Let me sign into portal.azure.com with my corporate account. So I'll be going with up.tomar@gtechlearn.com. And let me just quickly log in. And we are here. Let me say I want to go for creating a new resource, and that's going to be a virtual machine. So I'm going with Windows Server 2019 data center right from here. And when I go for creating the virtual machine, let's say I want to create a new resource group, that's going to be RG demo. Let me go for OK. The virtual machine name, that's going to be VM dem. The location, also the region wherever you are going to host your location, your resources could be hosted across globally distributed regions, but the most cost-effective region is East US because of the amount of the number of data centers which are located in the East US region. So if you are fine with a little bit of latency, East US is the region you should go for because the prices are the cheapest over there. So I'm going to deploy my resource out there in East US, whether I want an availability zone. Let's say I do not want any kind of redundancy as of now. The image being used is data center, Windows Server 2019 Gen 1. Then I have the size. So when I go for size, by default, it is $91 per month, wherein I'm getting one CPU and 3.5 gig of memory. I can click on see all sizes and I can see the sizes which are available for a virtual machine. So right now, it is giving me 406 VM sizes for the subscription, that is Microsoft Partner Network. So on the basis of the subscription you are using, on the basis of the region you are currently located in, the size and the pricings related to them, they are going to change, they are going to fluctuate. So right now you can see the most used plans. We have the DS1 version 2, wherein I get one virtual CPU, I get 3.5 gig of RAM, I get 4 data disks, the maximum IOPS supported are 3200, I get 7 gig of temporary storage, premium disks, they are supported, and the cost per month is 91 US dollars. Similarly, let's say if I were to go for another plan, let's say I'm going for a basic plan, I'm going for B1S, I get one virtual CPU, 1 gig of RAM, 2 data disk, 320 maximum IOPS supported, 4 gig of temporary storage, and the cost per month is $10. These prices can increase up till 548 US dollars for general purpose sizes, that is the T8S version 3. That's fine. Let me go with the DS2 V2. So that's basically how you can define a size for a virtual machine. And on the basis of this size, your pricing is going to change. When we come across back to our presentation, so that was one thing, the kind of resource you are going to specify, the usage that your meter is going to track, and the number of meters which will be associated with that resource, all of that depends on the resource type. The second primary factor affecting the cost is services. So what kind of service you are using, whether it is an enterprise grade of service, whether it is a free or a free service, that is going to define how your cost changes. So if it is an enterprise service, if it is a web direct service, if you are a customer service customers, so depending on the billing periods and your usage rights, they can differ between all these kind of services. Third up, we have location. So as I already mentioned, Azure resources hosted in the US East region, they are the cheapest of all. The Azure infrastructure, it is globally distributed, and your usage, it might, like the cost, it might vary from location to location. So we'll see all of these when we go for the Azure pricing calculator. But before that, let's talk about the other three primary features that affect cost of your resources on Azure. So we have bandwidth. When it comes to bandwidth, there is some inbound data transfers which could be free, and there could be some inbound data transfer which might be charged. Similarly, for outbound data transfer, like data going out of your Azure data centers, going out of your Azure Synapse or Azure Databricks models, pricing will be based on the kind of zones you are located in, whether you are in the American zone, whether you are in the Northeast region. So your bandwidth depends on them, and on the kind of bandwidth you are consuming, your price is going to change over there. Similarly, other networking features can also affect your bandwidth. Other networking features can also affect your cost. For example, if you want to go for creating subnets and if you want a specific dedicated IP range, over that you'll have to go for making some budget cuts right there. So we have bandwidth. Next up, we have reserved instances. So what you can do as an Azure customer is, instead of paying as you go, instead of paying for the resources whenever you deploy them, you can reserve certain amount of space on the Azure data centers for yourself, and that could be for like it could be a 1 year plan, it could be a 3 year plan, or it could be a 5 year plan. as long the plan is, the price will get reduced for you. So we can go for the reserved instances, and with Azure reservations, you are basically committing to buy 1 year or 3 year or 5 year plans for multiple products. Since you are committing to reserve space with Microsoft data centers, they will definitely reduce your price, and that cost cut down could be up till 72% of what you pay the on the consumption basis plans. So definitely reserved instances are something which can help you cut down cost if you are ready for a commitment for a year-long commitment. Other than that, we have Azure Hybrid Use Benefit. So Azure Hybrid Use Benefit, it is again another tool that lets you use your on-prem licenses. If you are, for example, if you want to access database, if you want to use Azure SQL, or you want to use, let's say, SharePoint Online, or if you want to use any kind of Office 365 service as well, if you have on-prem subscriptions and on-prem licenses and you want to use them, in case of migration, in case of cloud deployment, you want to stick with the existing licenses, well, definitely you can make use of Azure Hybrid Benefit so as to use your on-prem licenses on Azure at a reduced cost. And that way you do not have to pay an additional cost for buying another subscription for the same application you are currently using. So these are 6 of the primary factors. These are not the only factors which can affect your cost, but definitely these are some of the premium considerations which need to be kept in mind while you are managing your cost out there. That brings us to the next segment, that is the pricing calculator. So before we go towards the pricing calculator, let me quickly bring on the browser. So I'm going for Azure Price Calculator, and that will take me to azure.microsoft.com, and that will take me to pricing calculator, the tool right there. So the pricing calculator, the Azure pricing calculator, it is currently loading up. You can sign in if you want, and that would give you more, uh, you can say more tailored fit um, options right out there. So when we talk about pricing calculator, it is a tool provided by Microsoft that helps you estimate the cost of Azure products. So for example, while you are at your development stage or the designing stage, and while you are considering how many resources you would be requiring, how many resources you would be configuring, what kind of resources would they be. So while you are discussing all of that, definitely you can make use of pricing calculator and you can understand uh, how your deployments are going to affect your wallet. So you can, while you are at it, you can go for selecting out any kind of resource, and you can check, you can specify the tier of service you want to use, the region where you want to deploy those service. You can go for setting up the billing options. You can setting up the support options. If there are any offers or programs running for that service, for that resource, you can definitely check them out. You can check the development or testing prices as well. So the feature resources, there are the compute resources of virtual machines, storage accounts. We have database for Azure SQL database, the app services, Azure Cosmos DB. So these are some of the featured products. For example, let's say I'm going for virtual machine and I want to check out the cost for that. So I just clicking on view and I'm here on my pricing area. So right here, you can go for checking out. So by the default configurations which have been set for this Cosmos database, for this dedicated gateway, and for this virtual machine, the total cost I might be getting is $366. Let me say I want to go for deleting the Cosmos DB, right? Let me delete that. Or instead, let me just go and sign in once. Signing into the portal for Azure pricing model, for the Azure pricing calculator. So now I'm on my Azure pricing calculator, and if I go for the pricing tier, I can go for checking out the resources that have been added. Let's say I want to monitor the, right now my estimate, I need to select a product. I can choose an example scenario. I can open any saved estimate to view the monthly cost that will get affected. So for example, let's say I want to check it for a virtual machine. Let me click on view, and that brings me up here. That gives me the estimated cost for this virtual machine that has been added rightfully over here. And the estimated upfront cost is $0 and the monthly cost is $152. That is the default price for a virtual machine coming with these particular configurations. The region is West US, operating system is Windows, type is OS only. The tier of subscription is standard tier. So that's the standard tier service. Then if you want to check out for the categories, what is the instance series? That's D2 version 3. So I'm getting two virtual CPUs, 8 gig of RAM, 50 gig of temporary storage, and the price you can monitor over here. So if I just make a slight change and change from West US to East US, my price reduces a little bit, and from 152 I'm getting 137 US dollars. So just because I've switched from West US to East US, the pricing gets changed. And if I try to go for some other some other Azure region, let's say I want to try it out on Norway East, the price will increase again. That becomes 163 US dollars. So definitely your location is going to affect how your prices change. If I go for South Korea, my prices are reduced a little bit than Norway, but still the prices are more than what we see at US region. That's 140 US dollars. Let me come back to a US location. I'm on the North Central US, and that's 140 US dollars out there. Instead, I want to go for Linux-based operating system. Over there, my price gets 73 US dollars. So on the basis of the operating system you are using, the price gets changed right over there as well. Similarly, you could go for making out other configurations, like if you want to switch the what kind of operating system do you want, whether it is Ubuntu, whether it is Red Hat, whether it is CentOS. You can specify that. What is the instance? What is the size you want to use for your virtual machine? So let's say I'm going with D14 V2, wherein I get 16 virtual CPUs, 112 gig of RAM, 800 gig of temporary storage, and my prices increase to $1,000 per month. If I go for changing the tier from standard to basic, the price gets reduced to $13 because my plan, my instance automatically changes to a basic service. So I have the A0, A1, A2, A3, and A4 kind of service. I can go with the 8 cores, 14 gig of RAM, 240 gig of temporary storage, and I get 274 US dollars. So that's just for one virtual machine I'm monitoring. You can definitely go up ahead and you can pick multiple um, resources and you can add them to your bucket. So for example, let's say out of the compute resources, I want to check one for my app service. So let app service has been added. Apart from that, I will also be configuring a database. And let's say that database is going to be Azure Cosmos, Azure SQL database. So I need Azure SQL database. Let me add that. Other than that, if you want to go for any analytical service, you want to use Azure Synapse or Databricks to go for analytical services out there, you want to use HT Insight. Let's say I just want Azure Bot Service. I want to create some chatbots and I want to enable them on the web app, the API service I just chose. So I've added some 3 to 4 services in my bucket, and now it will give me a cumulative price of all those applications together. For the virtual machine, my estimated price per month is 274 US dollars. If I go next for my app service, which is currently in the basic tier, you can go for standard tier, a premium tier. Let's say I'm going with a standard tier application and I want 2 cores, 3.5 gig of RAM, 50 gig of storage. There is only one instance. If you, I want to deploy, let's say 4 web apps. So I have 4 instances, and how long do you want to run them per month? Once that has been specified, your price changes. Next up, we have the Azure SQL database. So for the Azure SQL database, your region currently, whether you want to deploy an elastic pool or a single database, if you want to go for any, what is the backup storage tier? Currently, it is selected as read accessible geo redundant storage. So that's fine. What is the purchase model, whether it is the DTUs, the data transmit units, or whether it is virtual cores? What is the service tier, whether it is business critical or general purpose, or whether it is hyperscale? So it is a general purpose database I want to go for. Whether the compute tier is provisioned or serverless, you can specify all of that. Next, what is the kind of redundancy you want? Whether you want to deploy it over multiple availability zones or whether you want to keep it on a local redundancy, you can go with that. And for my SQL database, my current price per month is 1472 US dollars. Now, under the compute area, you have multiple options. You have this pay as you go, which is your consumption based plan. You have 1 year reserved instance. So if you want to go for creating a reserved instance, your price gets changed for the entire year you will be paying. So your price gets changed. If I go for a 3 year reserved instance, the price gets decreased as compared to a 1 year reserved instance. So you can see that what is your payment option, whether it is upfront or whether it is monthly, you can configure that. If you want to go for SQL license, whether you'll be using, whether you'll be requiring a new license, so you'll be asking my Azure for a new license, or you'll be going with an existing license, you can specify that, and that will affect your cost in certain cases. Let's say I'm going with pay as you go, and the price is 983 US dollars with a 3 year reserved instance. Next up, we have for the storage of 32 gig, I'm paying $3 for the backup storage. I'm not paying anything as of now because the backup storage is zero. Let's say I'm keeping it 4 gig. I'm keeping it as 10 gig of backup storage. So $2 for that. Since this is a long-term retention, what is the average database size during the retention period? I am going with 20 GB, or let's say I'm keeping it as 50 gig. So that's my price. That's my specifications. What is the weekly backup retention? So that's going to be one number of weeks. So you can specify that, and that will give you your monthly cost, which is 989 US dollars for your Azure SQL database. Up next, we have the Azure Bot Service. Where is it located? Let's say I want to keep that up in Asia region. I want to host it in Southeast Asia. Or instead of that, let me see if I want to keep it in Central India region. Then what is the tier you want to select, whether it is a free tier or a S1 tier? I'm going with S1. How many messages in thousands do you want? So I want, let's say, 100,000 of messages per month. That will give me a $50. And the cumulative price for all these services altogether is something around 2,000 US dollars. So based upon your requirements, how many resources you want to deploy, whether you want to go for a reserved instance or not, whether you want to use any Azure hybrid, whether you want to make use of Azure hybrid or not, if you have any on-prem licenses, you can definitely make those changes right over here on your pricing calculator, and you can make use of it to calculate the total price for your tool, for your resources. So that was pricing calculator for you. Other than that, we have the total cost of ownership calculator, which is again another tool to estimate your cost savings, wherein you can realize, which you'll be realizing once you have migrated to Azure. So if I were to show you that, let me go for Azure TOC, and that will take me to the total cost of ownership calculator for Azure. So we have 3 phases in here, 3 steps. The first step is define your workloads. So on the basis of what your organization structure is and what your organization's posture is in terms of the resources it requires, you can key them up. You can fill this form as per your requirements, as per your organization's requirements. If there were any kind of assumptions, you can go on the next stage, you can go for adjusting those assumptions. You can change the assumptions, whatever you made. And once that has been done, since here you will be keying up, this is more the next step, view report will give you the actual price or the estimated price which you'll have to pay once you have deployed or migrated yourself to Azure cloud. So this is a service which is primarily used by people who are working on on-prem clouds or their own private clouds. So Azure Total Cost of Ownership tool helps them to, you can say, helps them to analyze how much cost they can reduce or how much cost they can save once they have migrated to Azure. So this is the this is the TCO for you, the total cost of ownership for you. A report that compares the cost of on-prem infrastructures with the cost of your Azure products. So that is what your TCO is for you. And that was pretty much what we had to talk about, the tools which are required for Azure pricing. Up next, we have Azure Cost Management. So it is again another service from Azure itself, which can be accessed right from the portal. So let me go back home. I do not want to create a virtual machine as of now. We have the cost management tool. You can go for the marketplace and search for cost, and that will give you the cost management plus billing service from Microsoft Azure. Once I go for that, you can check for the billing scopes. You can check for the data. You can check for the cost management options. If there are any management groups and you want to check out your cost on the basis of the management groups, well, you can definitely do that. So on my billing scope, it will give me the billing account. That's for Microsoft Online Service. So since currently for this demonstration, I'm using a Microsoft Partner Network, I am getting $100 US dollar subscription per month, which gets recharged automatically, being a partner of Microsoft Network. And other than that, so I get $100 for that. So I won't be getting billed for anything. But if I try to create resources, my $100 will get reduced by the resources I'm using. For example, if I were to show you the current credit remaining, that's 74 US dollars, and I have hosted up a virtual machine since past 2 weeks. That's a basic tier virtual machine. Apart from that, I've deployed one or two resources in the past few days, and that's pretty much what I have paid for. So you can check your cost management and billing area. You can go for the cost management and analyze and optimize your cloud cost. Currently, since we do not have any kind of data, it won't be giving me any kind of charts out there, but definitely for a production environment, you'll be getting you'll be getting visualizations which can help you with your data enrichment. You can set up alerts, you can set up budget limits, and definitely other than that, you'll get advisor recommendations. So for my cost management area, I have these 4 resource groups. Under these resource groups, I might be having some data. So as you can see, my RG is consuming the most of the cost out there. And if I go for that, there's a virtual machine, there's a VM disk, there's an IP address. So that's fine. If I go for the cost analysis, that will give me the cost analysis metrics right there. So forecast unavailable as of now, you can see the actual total cost is $23. The forecast says $90 per month. So you can definitely see the charts right there for one or two services which you have hosted. For the service name which is consuming the maximum cost, right now there's a virtual machine which has consumed $19. So that's forming the major part. Then we have a storage account, we have virtual network, IoT hub, bandwidth, functions, and Azure App Service. So that's the cost which is being consumed as of now. You can go for setting up alerts if there are any alerts, if you have met up your limit, or if you have spent more than what you could spend and there is a credit alert, then you can set up these alerts right from here. You can go for the add button and you can set up cost alerts. You can use the budget option to monitor your budgets and set up you can set your spending budget right over here. Other than that, the next section is the Azure Advisor recommendations, which provides you with cost recommendations that you can implement in order to reduce your pricing while maintaining the best of the service for your Azure resources. So that's Azure Cost Management for you. Going ahead, well, there's a certain workflow which needs to be followed when you talk about minimizing cost and while you are doing the R&D for that. So the number one step is performing cost analysis, for which you can use the pricing calculator and the TCO calculators. Then you can monitor your usage using Azure Advisor or Azure Monitor, and you can monitor how your services are being used, how your resources are operating. So you can monitor that. You can use these spending limits, you can configure spending limits, and you can use them in order to keep a check on your spending limits right there. You can use Azure reservations, you can use Azure hybrid benefit for using your on-prem licenses out there. You can definitely choose low cost locations, definitely East US being the cheapest one right out there. You can keep up to date with the latest Azure customer data, and then you can identify tags to your to you can apply tags to identify the cost owners. So you can create custom tags and you can assign those tags to your resources so that you can define which user of your organization is making the most costly purchases. Well, that's Azure Cost Management for you. Next up, we have Azure SLAs and Service Lifecycles. So basically, Azure Service Level Agreement, it describes how Microsoft is going to commit to your data security for its uptime and connectivity. So there are service level agreements which are based on individual products and individual services. You can definitely read for the knowledge articles for these service level agreements from docs.microsoft.com, which will help you know about the which will help you know about the different service level agreements which are there for each individual product, be it any compute resource, any web resource, any database resource, any networking resource. You can definitely know about them from there. Then there are detailed agreements on what kind of service will be provided, what will be the uptime, what will be the availability, how they'll ensure connectivity, if there will be any kind of data duplicacy or data or disaster recovery backup plans. So definitely all of that would be a part of your service level agreements. Just keep in mind that whatever feature which is there as which is provided as a free feature, like a free plan for hosting your web app, or of or whatever feature which is currently under the preview stage, that is Azure preview stage, which is just out there for beta testing and not has been released yet for general public. Those kind of features or services, they won't be a part of any SLA and they won't be offering any SLA out there. So that's Azure's SLA for you. There are these six different SLAs. We have the 99% SLA, which has a 7-hour downtime per month. We have 99.5 with a 3-hour downtime per month. 99.9 giving you 43 minutes of downtime per month, and 99.999% of SLA. The SLA, that's the SLA name, 99.999%, something which comes with your Azure Cosmos database, a highly expensive service for some good reasons out there. So that will only give you a 26 seconds of downtime per month. So, and in any case, if a service fails to meet the guarantees, you will definitely get reimbursed for that. A percentage of the monthly service fee which you are paying to Azure, that would be credited back to you. So you are definitely getting reimbursed in case any service fails. So that's Azure SLAs for you. And there are certain actions which can affect SLAs, like if you are creating more services and you are adding more services, you're not being consistent among what kind of service level you are using, and your services are something like your compute resources are of enterprise grade and your web apps are of premium grade, whereas you're using free apps for your bots and logic devices. So in that case, since you are not consistent with your services, that could definitely lower your SLA in comparison, because of uh, an irregular portfolio of service you are using. And if you are using any kind of free service or any kind of non-SLA service, that will lower your SLA, since those services do not offer any SLA and the cumulative score will definitely get reduced. Whereas if you're going for availability zones or redundant systems and you want to create uh, duplicacy, you want to implement disaster recovery plans, you want to go for enabling read access, secondary locations, these kind of actions definitely raise your SLA because you are going for more advanced services. So the higher the service, and the higher the SLA is. So many factors, they can raise or lower your SLA. Whenever you are making any decision, make sure that your decisions are based on what business goals you want to drive out from your SLA goals. So that's pretty much what we had to discuss in this session, guys. And that brings us to the end of the seminar. Now, don't forget to visit gtechlearn.com/webinars. And over there, you can find and register for the upcoming webinars. We have these upcoming webinars in June for business process automation using Power Platforms. And we have Azure Data Factory for Azure. So definitely go ahead for gtechlearn.com and definitely go for registering these upcoming events. Well, that brings us to the end of the webinar, and thanks for attending, guys. Thank you.